Welcome to the TikTok Drop Capsule. Time to open today's drop, and it's a hard reality check.
The reason why you can't afford to buy a home in 2025 and you're still living at your parents' house is because you drink Starbucks, you have a cell phone, you have a Netflix subscription, and you buy clothes. Apparently, this is the reason why. And it has nothing to do with the fact that home prices have gone up 60% in the last 5 years. And let's not forget that the average rent in the United States is at least $2,000. No, it's a cell phone and Starbucks. I agree with people to some extent that if you want to buy a house in 2025, you need to cut back on spending and make some sacrifices. But if giving up Starbucks was the answer, no one would be drinking it. And it's not like people in the 1930s didn't have things to waste their money on. But the big difference is back then, essentials weren't eating up 60% of their gross income. Today, if you add up your shelter costs, your food, your gas, you're gonna be 60% into your paycheck. There's not much left to play with, let alone save. And I know comparing with the Great Depression is oversimplistic, but reading some of your responses is just shocking. Do you people not realize the housing crisis we're currently going through right now? There are literally engineers in the comments section that can't afford to buy a house, and that's not right. But yeah, keep blaming the $7 coffee and the avocado toast.
Boomers want to know what it's like being young in 2025? Here it is. I just got off an 8-hour shift at work where I make double minimum wage in my state. I hop in my car, check my banking app. Cool, I've got $50 to last me till next week. Then I remember, oh shit, I have to run to Walmart because the wire in my bra snapped. I don't have underwear because it keeps going missing. My eyelash curler broke, and I have no food. I bought 4 things. 4 fucking things, and it came out to $40! I'm living off granola bars. But I hop my depressed ass back in my car, and I look at my banking app again. Oh, cool, I've got $10 now to last me till next week. I try to drive, but my car keeps misfiring. I can't afford to fix that. So I keep on parking, turning off my car, turning it back on until it decides to act right. 30 minutes later, I'm finally heading home to my 4 roommates. I pay $8.50 a month. Now give them that's everything included, but $8.50 a month with 4 roommates. Remember back in the good old days when a man could afford to feed, raise, house his family on minimum wage? And he had a second family on the side who he also housed, fed, and raised. You know what I say to all that? Fuck you. You guys had it so fucking easy and then you destroyed everything behind you. Fuck you.
You ever realize the American dream used to mean a house with a white picket fence, and now it's just, please let my landlord answer the maintenance request? As a millennial, I used to think, okay, if I work hard, save, and eat ramen for 5 years, I'll buy a house. But now, I could eat dust for a decade and still not afford a shed in California.
If we don't do something soon about the economy and the housing crisis, a lot of us are going to end up homeless. And I'm not exaggerating. Gen X, us millennials, and Gen Z, and soon to be Gen Alpha, are all getting crushed by the same machine. Wages are flat. Rent has become unaffordable. Mortgages have become unattainable. Groceries feel like you're being robbed at gunpoint. And jobs, they expect you to be grateful over a 25-cent raise while inflation eats you alive. Meanwhile, all the fucking people in charge, they're buying multiple homes in cash. They tell us, just work a little harder, save a little bit more, while they print trillions of dollars and then inside trade those dollars they just printed so that they can multiply their net worth and let BlackRock buy up all the homes in your neighborhood. It's time to realize we the people are under attack. Mentally, financially, spiritually. And here's the fucking truth. If we don't organize, if we don't speak up, if we don't act, a lot of good people, your friends, your parents, your kids, are gonna be out on the street wondering what the hell happened. We're running out of time. Either we start doing something now, or we're gonna watch everything we love disappear. This isn't a drill. This isn't politics. Not left, not right. This is survival. Wake up.
Let's be real, the math just isn't mathing anymore. The average house in the US costs around $500,000. The average salary, about $50,000. So unless you're living off sunlight and good vibes, there's no way that works. Meanwhile, corporations are out here buying homes like they're Pokemon cards. Gotta catch 'em all, right? Except it's our homes, and now we're the ones renting from Megacorp Housing LLC.
As a millennial, I just want to say I'm really concerned about the Gen Z generation in regards to not being able to afford to buy a home in America. Like, what are the implications going to be 10, 15 years down the road when the average adult American cannot afford to own a home and is renting? How is that going to change the economy of the United States? Now, we're already seeing record high cases of corporations buying single family homes in America. Now, what does that mean? That means that people are renting those homes rather than buying, and they're being priced out of buying those homes from corporations. Now, where I live in Massachusetts, the average home costs about $500,000. That's $500,000, and the average household makes about $50,000 a year. So the math is not mathing. So just to crunch those numbers, if a first-time home buyer buys a $500,000 house in Massachusetts with a 5% down payment, you're looking at about a $4,000 to $4,200 mortgage payment. That's just your mortgage. That's not all of your other bills that you have to pay in life. Now, a $50,000 salary brings you in about $3,300 a month. So the average salary cannot afford the average mortgage payment in Massachusetts. Never mind all of the other bills, just your mortgage payment, not your car, not all of your utilities and everything else in life, your groceries. So the numbers are just way off. So I'm just really concerned of what I'm seeing out there. The numbers are not mathing. I'm not sure if we're about to see some kind of bubble pop. Of course, when you look back in history, like the '08 crisis, it seems so crystal clear. Like, of course that was going to happen. But, you know, of course, only the experts at that time period, only the experts of the experts were able to predict that happening. So I'm just saying, just looking out there as a normal person, the numbers are not making sense. I'm not seeing a lot of people my age or younger buying houses unless, you know, maybe your dad owns a real estate brokerage or you come from a really wealthy family, or, you know, some people just do really well and they're able to afford it. But I'm just speaking for the masses, the majority of Americans. I'm not seeing a world where this gets better anytime soon unless there was like some epic collapse. And right now, in real life right now, I'm not seeing a world where the Gen Z generation is able to afford to buy a house. Are we going to see a real estate market collapse? Are we going to see a world where the majority of people don't buy houses and that's just like a super luxury? I'm really not sure, but I just don't see enough people talking about it, which is why I wanted to make this video.
And while Gen Z gets blamed for buying iced coffee instead of real estate, the truth is they'd have to skip coffee for 347 years to afford a down payment. Let's put that into perspective. You can literally make six figures now and still live with your parents. And it's not because you love mom's lasagna. It's because your rent would eat 80% of your paycheck before groceries even enter the chat. Half of Gen Z still lives at home, and 1 in 4 say housing costs are their biggest roadblock to success. And who can blame them? When the average mortgage is $4,000 a month and you make $3,300, you're already in the negative just for existing.
So I just wanted to hop on here and talk about the affordable housing crisis and how developers are spinning this into, you know, the rules are just, it's too hard. It's too hard to get investors to invest in apartments. It's hard to get investors to invest in your luxury apartment buildings that you all want to build. There are 52 planned or built new developments just in the neighborhood of Hollywood. 17 of them are still waiting for entitlements. Some of them have been waiting for over 5 years. And this is absolutely ridiculous. Some of them are fully funded. A lot of them want to tear down buildings that are already historic and have people living in them because they're affordable apartments. So don't believe the LA Times article. Just know that what they're trying to do is tear down affordable buildings, tear down mom and pop stores, and put up 6 to 9 floor apartment complexes with with expensive retail space in the basement or in the ground floor. They want to charge minimum $4,000 per apartment. I don't know about you, but by myself, I can't afford $4,000. I'm just a normal person. There aren't a lot of people that can afford to live in a luxury apartment that can't afford to just buy a house. So housing is important, and housing for all is more important than what they're doing. So remember context when you read newspaper articles or hear developers whining that they can't get anything built because of the city council. They could definitely get affordable housing built. They just don't want to build it.
Hey, did you know that young people between the ages of 20 and 29 are leaving Florida in record numbers? And it's not because they don't love the sunshine. It's because they can't afford to live here anymore. Between rising rents, sky high homeowners insurance, and wages that don't keep up, they're forcing the young people out. And when they leave, Florida loses its future workforce, its innovation, and its energy. As your next congressman, I'll fight to bring down the cost of living by tackling the insurance crisis, investing in affordable housing, and pushing for wages that match today's economy. Florida should be a place where young people can build their lives and not be forced to leave. If you agree it's time to make Florida more affordable, follow this campaign and let's bring a new generation of leadership to Washington.
So what happens next? Do we just accept that home ownership is a luxury item now? Like, oh, you bought a house? Damn, what crypto did you invent? But here's the wild part. This isn't just a Gen Z problem. Millennials, Gen X, even some boomers are getting crushed under the same system. Flat wages, insane insurance, groceries that feel like a stick-up. And the people in charge, they're buying multiple homes in cash. They tell us, just work harder, as if I can outwork a $1 trillion hedge fund. We're watching a slow-motion transfer of property from people to corporations, from communities to portfolios. And if we don't start demanding change, affordable housing, wage reform, limits on corporate home buying, we'll become a nation of permanent renters.
How did the American dream die? How did the middle class die? I'm going to tell you, it started in the 1980s with trickle-down economics that did not work. They decided to give tax cuts to the rich and corporations, saying that money would trickle down. It didn't. It just made the rich richer. Then we greenlit stock buybacks. So instead of, when the productivity was going up, instead of giving workers more money, they just bought back their stocks so the shareholders could make profit and the executives could get bonuses. Then we had leverage buyouts, and the government didn't regulate leverage buyouts, and that was the start of private equity basically buying up everything so that they could make more money. Then we moved away from pensions to 401ks, which essentially just took the responsibility and accountability of the company to take care of their workers with the retirement and put it on to individuals. But we were never taught economics in high school, so how the fuck are we supposed to know about compound interest and investing? But they said the 401k was better than the pension when it wasn't. Then they started shipping our jobs overseas, building the middle class of other countries so that they could make more profit, destroying the middle class here. Then we started ramping up the borrowing money and getting into debt as a country, which devalues our dollar. And then in 2008, we had predatory lending, which crashed the housing market, fucked over so many Americans. And then we used taxpayer money to bail out the banks. And when all the houses were cheap, the rich went and bought those up. And that's when you started to see the rent start to increase around the 2010s into the 2015s. And then in 2011, we allowed super PACs to exist. So billionaires can now buy elections, and they use that money on attack ads, which divides the country. Divide and conquer, and that's what they did. In 2020, we had the pandemic, which both sides of the aisle handled like absolute shit, shut down all small businesses, all the money went to the top, the rich got richer, they printed trillions of dollars more, which people needed, but what did all the people do? We spent the money because we needed to spend the money.
The saddest part? Our parents bought homes for $70,000 on one income. We can't even rent a closet for that. Their biggest worry was the lawn. Ours is, can I survive until payday without overdrafting? But here's the thing. Gen Z isn't lazy or lost. They're adapting. They're investing differently, hustling smarter, living with family to save, finding new ways to build wealth in a broken system. And maybe that's the new American dream. Not a picket fence, but community, creativity, and resilience.
About 1 in 3 Americans between 18 and 34 years old live with their parents. And while you may have heard more about this recently, this trend isn't new.
Between 2005 and 2015, the share just grew very steeply over this 10-year period. Since then, it's been fairly stable. There was an uptick, of course, during the pandemic. In the wake of the pandemic, those rates of parental co-residence are now about where they were right before. Part of the reason we see this escalation of young adults not leaving the nest or returning to the nest is this idea that it was harder and harder for them to weather shocks.
Nearly 30% of Gen Z said they would like to save, but don't make enough money. And roughly 2 in 5 millennials and Gen Z adults feel it's harder to build financial wealth now now than when their parents were their age because of the economy. 27-year-old Victoria Franklin has been living with her mother in New Jersey since she graduated college in 2019.
I saw all of the money that I was saving, and I thought, maybe I should stay home for a little bit, and I didn't feel an urgency to move out.
Not everyone is enthusiastic about this trend.
You guys are making six figures together. You can't tell me you can't afford a house. They just don't want to spend their money.
Oh, yeah. 36% of Americans said in a 2022 survey that more young adults living with their parents is bad for society. So here's why young Americans are choosing to live with their parents, and what the implications are for the U.S. economy.
My name is Victoria Franklin. I am 27 years old, and I live in my childhood home with my mother and my boyfriend.
Victoria graduated from the University of Miami in 2019 and moved in with her mom when she was looking for a job.
After I saw the cost of living and things like that after I graduated, that maybe I'd be home for about a year.
More than half of Gen Z adults say they don't make enough money to live the life they want due to high cost of living.
I ended up bartending and waitressing until October, where I got my first offer, so it did take a little bit longer than I expected. Currently live at the Jersey Shore, and I was commuting into New York City, which takes about 2 hours each way. And I thought, in 6 months or so, I'll move into the city, be closer to the job, and the pandemic threw a wrench in those plans.
Victoria now works a fully remote job, which she says she probably wouldn't have if it weren't for the pandemic. Without a commute to worry about, she was able to stay at her mom's for longer.
It's a lot harder for young people today to save up for, markers of the American dream than it was for previous generations. Part of the reason we see this escalation of young adults not leaving the nest or returning to the nest is this idea that it was harder and harder for them to weather shocks. And so, for example, if they suffered a layoff or they suffer some sort of health shock or they got in a car accident, if they didn't have any additional credit to weather that shock, they would end up moving back home. The financial stability of young adults, their ability to pay for things if they got into an emergency, was one of the big factors influencing whether or not they were living on their own or living with their parents.
A significant number of Gen Z adults and millennials lack emergency savings. In fact, 46% of millennials and 32% of Gen Z have more credit card debt than emergency savings. This can have ramifications for setting up a financial future. Roughly 1 in 4 Gen Z adults say housing costs are one of the biggest challenges to financial success.
The prices of homes has escalated over the last few decades much faster than actual incomes. So it is actually much harder for a millennial or a Gen Z to save up for a down payment to buy a home. And that's something that bears out in the data.
The pandemic did have a lot to do with it. I saw how much I was saving and I was like, maybe I shouldn't be paying, upwards of $3,000 a month and making somebody else richer when I could stay at home, save that money, and spend it on where I want to spend it. Between my job and my bartending and waitressing, I make anywhere from $85,000 to $95,000 a year. I would say about 40 to 50% of my salary is going right into savings. My mentality is, why rent and give my money to someone else when I can start to own? And so a big chunk of that money is going to go towards a down payment on a house.
Young adults ages 25 to 34 in high cost of living areas are more likely to live with their parents. Nearly 26% of young adults in New Jersey were living with at least one of their parents in 2022. The median household income in Oceanport, New Jersey, where the Franklins live, was nearly $133,000 in 2022, while the median value of a home in the region was around $644,000.
My dad built this house for $350,000 and was making probably $10,000 to $15,000 less than I was. My mom wasn't working at the time, and they were able to afford a $350,000 house on a $70,000 a year salary with a son. And that's not even the American dream anymore. That's not even possible. My aunt, who I fight with all the time, is always saying how you have to give somewhere, right? And my cousin said something to her the other day and said, we're giving everywhere. We don't get property. We don't get good school systems. Whatever we're trading off is too much to trade off.
Want to know how up Gen Z is? Not in a bad way, just in a this economy is insane kind of way. Over 50% of Gen Z adults still live with their parents. Not because they want to, but because rent is brutal. More than 70% have side hustles just to survive. Think reselling sneakers, DoorDash, or editing TikToks. Forget home ownership. Most Gen Z are like, I'll rent forever or live with 3 roommates. Banks? Nah, they're using Cash App, Venmo, or Chime. Traditional banks feel like dinosaurs. And get this, 40% started investing before 20. Crypto, stocks, even NFTs. And yeah, some learn the hard way. But here's the twist. They're more financially aware than people think. They just play by different rules. Gen Z isn't broken. They're adapting to a system that's already broken. If you're not adjusting, you're already behind.
They just released that to be able to afford a basic house in the US now, the median income is $115,000. That is crazy. That is crazy. It's insane. And in California, it's even more insane. The houses here are like $3 million for a shed. What is going on?
But still, let's be honest. If the numbers don't start mathing soon, we'll be the first generation that works full-time and still has to ask our parents for rent money.
Now, some parts of the market, the housing markets, have already crashed, folks. I mean, second quarter of 2025, what they call the vacant property zombie report, 1.4 million residential properties. That's up big time, 1.3% of all U.S. homes. So they're vacant, right? They're zombies. 13 consecutive quarters. Well, this number has been around that level. So, you know, obviously people drive through these neighborhoods. You see them, you know what we're talking about. And then, of course, this morning, we learned that mortgage applications were down yet again, third week in a row. And this is refis and purchases. Now, part of the problem is that there are now a lot more sellers. Look at this chart. This is fascinating. A lot more sellers than buyers, all right? 1.9 sellers, 1.45 potential buyers.